Springboks and Scotland this weekend, folks. I think this is the highest ranked match this weekend. Number 1 against number 5. And Russie's made a heap of changes. The Scots are a lot more stable looking, but the Scots don't win in South Africa. And they've got a bit of travel to do on their way to Pretoria. We'll go through the squads which have been announced. Russie announced his early, as usual, and the Scottish one, which has come out a fair bit more recently. Some of the recent stats and history between the teams and the predictions. You guys can let us know your thoughts. Obviously, the Boks played England last week and thumped them. Scots played Argentina and they thumped them. So you kind of got your two leading teams going head to head. So maybe this is a more interesting battle than the England and South Africa one was predicted to be. Remember, just like 6 months ago, no, more than 6 months ago, before the Six Nations, England against South Africa was supposed to be the game. Maybe this can kind of fill in a little bit as that, but I think the South Africans probably prefer to beat England than Scotland. I think that's just a bit of a... Everyone likes beating England. I think that is just a thing. Bowen, Fenta, Johan Grobelaar and Wilco Low. That is a all-changed front row in a team for South Africa, which has a heap of changes about it. It's obviously less experienced than the front row that played last week. Ox is out injured, Khalees is out injured, Evans out injured, Sasha's still injured, Esterhuizen's injured, so there's a fair few injuries in South Africa at the minute. Your locks are particularly, like Riley Norton only got that one game against the Barbars, now he's out injured, so you are getting a bit of depth tested, but I don't think that anyone would look at that front row and go, well, that's easier, because the front row in South Africa is still going to be a weapon. Corbus Visa and Rua Nokia is the second row this week, which has changed because Peter Steff had to be the kind of late replacement for Eben last week. So Peter Steff's back to his more usual back row position. I felt like maybe he might have got a rest this week if the injury toll was not so high, but they need a veteran, they need a leader out there to captain the side, and who better than Peter Steff to do that in the absence of Sia and some of the other kind of Bok leaders. He's alongside Paul de Villiers, who'll get a second cap in a row, so congrats to him. He was, I think Russie, I don't remember what word he used, because I watched the press conference a couple of days ago, but it wasn't patchy. It was a more positive word than patchy, kind of good in moments kind of thing. And I agree with that for sure. He's definitely going to be a threat at the Scottish breakdown. And then Evan Roos will be looking to get those big carries from number 8. He's got some competition because we saw Hanekom get a full game last week, albeit on the flank. We saw Jasper Visa, who was one of the stars of the match for South Africa last week at number 8. So Evan Roos has certainly got some big shoes to fill, but he's a big old ball carrier. So I look forward to seeing what he can do up against the Scottish Lucies, who are also pretty good. And I'm very chuffed for the guy wearing the number 9 jersey. Ambrose Papier finally gets himself back into the green and gold. It's been a long road back for that man, and he partners Andre Pollard, who, across a couple of stints with the Bulls, they are, long-time partners at 9 and 10. So they should have cracking cohesion levels and be really looking to pull the strings against a pretty good Scottish team. So really, really chuffed for Ambrose, because in the URC this season, he has been on absolute fire. I think they voted him South African Player of the URC tournament, right? Because he was just having such a season, and it's great to see Russie has the road back into the green and gold for players who are putting in those kind of consistent performance levels. He was part of the press conference as well, and you could kind of feel that he didn't want to say that getting back to the Springboks is the end of the road. It's still like a big challenge ahead of him. So we'll see how he goes. Midfield is Damian Willems and Jesse Kriel, so that's a shift. Willems was at fullback last week, getting his hands on a lot of ball at fullback. So I'll be curious to see if the Boks change things up a little bit in the way they utilize him as that kind of secondary playmaker at 12, because he's obviously not the kind of same crash ball style that you might get when you're playing De Allende. And then the wings is Kane Moody and Edwill van der Merwe. So Kane Moody's up from the bench where he was last week, and Edwill's back into the 23. Edwill was the Barbars game, wasn't it, where he showed that kind of lightning speed. Can't let that guy into any space. I know the Scottish wingers might be happy that there's no Colby there, but Edwill van der Merwe is another player of a similar kind of ilk. And then Apalele Fassi, likewise a bit of pressure because Damian Willems had just had such a good game at fullback last week. He was running a lot of ball, like him and Jasper Visa. Just so many carries from number 8 and from number 15 for the Boks last week. So I'll be curious to see if they kind of use Roos and Fassi in the same manner. Jon Hendrik Wessels is still there. Mkunu comes in. Zach Porthen gets another game as tight head replacement. BJ Dixon, good to see him. No one calls him BJ. It's just Ben Jason, Mark. Ben Jason Dixon is still there as the kind of lock, loose forward hybrid replacement. I hope he gets some good minutes because I still feel like that guy's got bags of potential, but we'll see when he comes on. Vincent Chituka is there. Elric Lowe is there. So extra forward this week for the Scots. Just the two backs in Grant Williams and Kewan Horn. Good thing about Grant Williams is he's so quick he can cover the wing, and Kewan Horn, the proper Swiss Army knife player, can cover multiple positions. Likewise can Damien Willems. Likewise can Kanan Moody. You've got multiple guys here. Jesse Creel, who can cover heaps of different positions. So even with two backs on the bench, they are still pretty well covered. For the Scots, they've kept things remarkably stable from the team that beat the Pumas. One change in the front row with Xander Fagerson having to come in. He came on early, though, last week for an injured Elliot Miller-Mills. So Xander was still chewing through the minutes. Ashman and Schoolman alongside him. They need to have a big game, obviously, and I hope they don't need to go too deep into the minutes because Gregor generally has a habit of playing his props pretty deep into the game, but at altitude, at Loftus, against the Boks, who are likely going to pull the trigger on their prop replacements around about 45 minutes. I don't think you can play the starting guys too deep. You need to have faith in Rory Sutherland and Will Hurd. Hurd's come in for Miller-Mills, who is, as I said, out injured. So you need to have faith in these guys to do a job, rather than, I think, thrash like Xander for 70 minutes and run them into the ground at altitude. Gregor Brown and Scott Cummings are the second row, so there's no Johnny Gray this week. I was sure Johnny Gray was going to get a start against South Africa just purely because of his bulk and because of his love for the tackle, but he is out of the 23 this week with Gregor Brown replacing him in that role. But Gregor Brown's got a fair bit of mongrel about him, so he would be best to bring that against the Boks because they will need that physicality. You need to match up with these guys and not go on the back foot. Matt Fagerson, Rory Darge, and Jake Dempsey is a very good back row. There's a lot of tackles and turnovers in Darge. How many did he make last week? 22 tackles and 2 turnovers. Matt Fagerson won 3 turnovers. He's a real jack of all trades in the number 6 jersey. And then Dempsey will be looking to get the go forward. Him against Ruas should be an interesting battle because they're both big ball carrying number 8s. 9 and 10 of Ben White and Finn Russell. So we're back to the premier combo for Scotland because remember, Finn Russell didn't play last week. He wasn't quite match fit, but he's fit for the Scots. So I guess if there's one guy you wanted to have back, it's probably Finn Russell. Although they did do a bit of box kicking from Ben White last week, but you've got the extra playmaker option with the kind of magic passes that Finn's going to throw at 10 with the altitude, a bit less have resistance on the ball, so we'll see what he can do if he can rip some passes around. But the midfield is really where the Scots set things alight last week. Tuipulotu and Hutchinson were on absolute fire. The width they were getting on the ball was just so magic, so easy on the eye. I don't know, man. I feel like they're gonna take that usual Gregor Townsend strategy of playing relatively high tempo and looking to kick less and looking to work the team around the paddock against the Boks. And it feels like on paper maybe that can work, but it just doesn't, generally. There's two teams the Scots seem to struggle with in particular. It's the Irish and the South Africans. Their style, the rock, paper, scissors thing just doesn't match up well. Yeah, but we'll see. The way they ran the Argentinians off their feet last week was really, really pleasing. Dobie and Steyn are still on the wings, and Kyle Rowe was electric last week. He was so good. You've got the two best fullbacks from last week going against each other, albeit Damien Willems has shifted to 12 this week. But like Kyle Rowe, 5 line breaks, 150 metres, 8 defenders beaten, a try. He was at times unplayable. See if he can do the same against the Boks. Hiddleston, who got his debut last week, he's on the bench still. Rory Sutherland, Will Hurd, as I mentioned, the props. Alex Samuel, Josh Bayliss, and Magnus Bradbury comes in for 6-2 for the Scots as well. And remember, Gregor doesn't usually play 6-2. He usually goes 5-3. Even when everyone else is playing 6-2, Gregor usually switches to the extra, keeps to the extra back, but this time he switched it up. But he's also got Tom Jordan and Stafford McDowell on the bench, who are pretty flexible. There's no halfback on the bench because he's got Jamie Dobie on the wing, who covers halfback as well. Some stats for you. The Boks last week had 10 22 entries and scored 7 tries. So they were pretty effective when they got themselves down England's end. They also managed 10 line breaks, which is right up there. Anytime you're getting into double-digit line breaks, you're causing your opposition lots of problems. Although they did concede a few points, especially during the Kurt Lee Arendse yellow card. Both sides, England and South Africa, in their games conceded points when they had the man down. Some teams don't. Some teams are able to keep things very tight when they got the man disadvantage, but South Africa will certainly be looking to keep things 15 on 15. For the Scots, they take the South African numbers and make them one better because they had 9 22 entries, so one fewer than the Boks, and also scored 7 tries against the Pumas. So both sides were pretty efficient. They also had 10 line breaks, matching South Africa's number, although they did concede 5 tries, including a kind of quick-fire double at the end. Like when the Argentinians roared into life, they were able to get some go forward against the Scots. And you know the South Africans are going to be roaring into life, so they'll need to be on for the whole game. The Scots for this one. Recent history is all South African wins, 5-zip. That goes back to 2015, to the 2015 World Cup. In fact, there are games at Murrayfield, and then 2023 World Cup in Marseille. These are all South African wins. The average score is 28-14, so the Boks are usually a couple of tries better than the Scots. The last Scotland win over the Boks was 2010 and never in South Africa. So it would be a history-making win if the Scots can get it done here. The last match in South Africa was not a close one between these two teams. It was 55-6 back in 2014, but that's well over a decade ago now. So how relevant that is, probably not very, but my point is South Africa and South Africa are a pretty tough team to beat. The bookies' predictions would kind of concur with that because they've got the Boks as 19-point favourites, hence me wearing the Scottish gear because it's underdog for the preview, winning jersey for the review, and the Scottish underdog factor goes even further with the Rugby Forecast algorithm, which is run by a Scotsman. 22 points. South Africans are favourites, so even more than what the bookies are saying. It is on at Loftus in Pretoria. Late afternoon kickoff, 5:40. Pierre Brousset is the ref for this one, the Frenchman. I think the last match I saw him referee at test level was a Six Nations game, and there was something like close to 30 penalties conceded and about 6 cards. So fingers crossed it's not like that. Fingers crossed it's a low referee involvement match, but we will see. I might have to watch this one delayed because it's on at like 3 in the morning my time, but very much looking forward to it. As I said, the Scottish style, which is entertaining, and they've got some great players, especially the back line, but the forwards are very good too. Just doesn't seem to match up well against the Boks. But the Boks have made a heap of changes. I don't want to say they're vulnerable because they got heaps of depth, but I don't know, man. I just really want to see. I want to see a good game. I want to see someone give the Boks a real good go. But Russie's building some depth. He wants to be ready for next year's World Cup. Should be a fascinating one. You guys let us know your thoughts. Take care. Subscribe. I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.